the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 114, recorded Friday, October 25th, 2013. Faces for Radio.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing. Scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. It's time for AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. It says so right there on the lower third. If you're watching this, this is the first ever, it may be the last, Google Hangout version of AV Week. That's important because Google Hangout is kind of a product of AV Week. AV Week is a product of Google Hangouts. Let's continue on, please. This whole video thing is screwing me up. First up is Dawn Mead. She is AV Dawn. She is the social maven, the marketing coordinator for Net AV, and also the host of AV Social. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. It's a little disconcerting seeing myself on screen.
Sorry. Also with us is George Tucker. He is the engineering coordinator for World Stage, and he does an awful lot here at AVNation. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Good to see you all.
Good to see you as well, sir. Also with us, the youngin' of the group, he is Matt Scott. The token Canadian is what his lower third says, but if you ask other Canadians, he's the world's worst Canadian. He also has a company called Omega Audio Video. How are you, brother?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
I'm awake.
Awake is good for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Or 3 o'clock Eastern time. It's 2 o'clock in the real world.
It's like it's 3:30 in the real world.
Okay, whatever.
Good try. How many people know there's a Central Time zone? You don't live in Central? No one.
The Cardinals live in the Central. All right, that's all I got. And last but not least is Michael.
Get 3 more.
Michael Drainer from Sennheiser USA, and he's wearing sunglasses for some reason.
Because I wear my sunglasses at night.
It's not night. All right, this week we're going to talk about Kramer. Also wireless audio and how the FCC may not be screwing things up, which would be a plus for them. What kind of cabling is going to take us into the future? And really we're talking about not the 1080p, not necessarily 1080p deep color, but really where we're headed, which is 4K and 8K, and if you believe them, 16K, which is scary, the fact that I've already heard that term. Also talk about Cables to Go, a new initiative that they're launching. But first, if you missed it, Apple has a new iPad. Yay! iPad. It's called the iPad Air, which, first of all, immediately scared the you-know-what out of me because I thought, oh, good Lord, they made an entirely cloud-based device. So was I the only one that thought that initially? Holy cow.
Yeah, you were.
I was the only person?
You were, yeah.
Okay, lovely. All right. Well, anyhow, it's called the iPad Air. It's the new iPad, right? Because the iPad 3 technically was not called the iPad 3. It was called the new iPad or just the updated iPad, whatever it was.
The new iPad.
It was the new iPad. Well, the new iPad, the iPad 4 now, I guess, if you don't count the mini as a derivative in the line.
It's a standalone product line. It's a mini.
It's a stupid product line.
Yeah, tell that to the phablet people.
Yes, I know. So here's the deal. It's still going to be $500. They're still going to sell the old iPad 2 for $400. 16 gig model for $500 if you want it with the cellular, which I do know some people that really, really got into that. $630 roughly. Here's the thing, though, guys. Not only this tablet itself, but others like it are pushing more and more into AV and more into bring your own devices and stuff like that. Dawn, is this just another one of Apple's, forward-thinking things, and are we going to be seeing more and more of these devices in our AV installations?
We're definitely going to keep seeing more and more BYOD and these sort of devices in our installations. I just think it's funny that Apple continues to completely ignore the presence of all of its competitors. which are not iProducts, the Android-based tablets, and outside of the actual tablet market, Android is the leader. Like 70% of the world's cellular and phone and smartphone market, they're all Android-based, and I think the tablets are the only thing that Apple's leading, and it's getting close. So I just think it's funny they're not lowering their prices, and they're not really like they're pretending the rest of the world of tablets doesn't even exist. So I just tablets will be there.
The little guy in the back of the room wants to talk.
They make, and you guys all know I'm a big Apple fan.
No,
but I know, shocking. When you look at the tablet data use market share, it's like 70% of all tablet network use is on an iPad.
Currently.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous. And when you look at phones, Apple makes what? Now 2 models. 2. Samsung makes 120, and they sold 9 million in their first weekend.
So riddle me this though, Matt. Why did Mr. Cook spend at least a third of the presentation making fun of their competitors by name and by image? They never do that. They now spend an inordinate amount of time at their presentations going, unlike our competitors, Windows 8
Cook's
background.
A bit of an interesting job.
So yeah, I don't think that's a personality quirk of just his. It's a corporate thing.
It is a bit of a corporate thing, but it's because everyone goes after them. So they're finally starting to play that game too.
I'm going to be like your mother. Does that make it right?
No, I'm not saying it makes it right. But I think they're just doing I don't necessarily like the way they're going after everybody else. I think it's a little foolish. But I do agree that in our reality, they can go after everybody. Yes, there's more Android devices out there, but how many devices are we talking about? Like they make, like love it or hate it, they make one product in each category pretty much, and they kill the market with one product. Show me a car company that could make 2 cars, heck, make 10 cars, and kill a market segment.
Tesla.
Nobody does that.
Tesla.
Yeah, because who else competes against Tesla? No one.
No, and to your point though, Matt. Here's the thing though. What you're bringing up though, in the U.S., the iOS device is the dominant phone singular operating system, right? Yes. Singular phone. It is not the most popular OS, however. Android is.
No.
And where we are with tablets is where iPhone and iOS was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where they were the dominant one, right? And Apple played their game, and Apple played the game of the 1980s where we're going to hold everything and nobody can do anything without asking us, and we have to approve everything, which creates for a great user experience. What it doesn't do, though, is it doesn't foster innovation and doesn't give people the opportunity to try new things, and that's what happened with the phone. Android is the most prevalent operating system for phones, not only in the U.S. but also throughout the world. And I'm afraid that eventually that will be the case when it comes to tablets.
Oh, it probably will be. But again, it comes down to Apple's philosophy, which we've talked about many times on the show. They're not the philosophy of, hey, let's open this all up and everybody screw around and do what you want. This isn't the build your own PC market that they cater to. They cater, like, for heaven's sakes, look at the price points of their products. They cater to that super, high-end, affluent type clientele that buy their product and they don't care. They want it to work out of the box. They don't want to screw with it. They don't want to play with it. And yeah, will innovation suffer a little bit? Possibly. But again, their main customer base isn't the ones using that or doing that type of innovation.
What about the deal where you have to have an Apple device to actually make an app for Apple? I mean, come on. It's not like Microsoft or Google are saying, you have to write this on a Microsoft OS for the mobile Windows, or for Android, you don't have to write it on a Chromebook. That's right. One thing that's a little bit irritating as well.
But for example, with Kindle and stuff like that, you have to export it directly into their format.
Yes, that's
right?
That's one. That's a Kindle, for crying out loud. Kindle.
No.
Kindle is not Android. Android is not Kindle. It's built on the Android app operating system, but it's not entirely. It's their own wrapper.
What do you want me to say to that?
I want you to say I'm right and you're wrong.
I don't think it matters.
Well, you asked the question, dude.
You did ask it.
I asked.
All right, moving
You
on.
did. What do you want me to say? No, I do have something to say to that, though. And in defense of our fair Canadian friend, my question is, though, who do we think the AV integrators will use for AV installs? Android, Apple, the rest. By far right now, Apple wins it by design and by features.
Yep.
It just is. Regardless of what everybody else is using, when it comes to adding that BYOB or that BYOD, excuse me, not the beer, the device. I need beer.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Have two. Who's going to put it in? And by design-wise, those Android and the Windows tablets don't look nearly as nice as the Apple stuff does with the knowledge and the user experience.
Well, and here's one of the side points to that. Is one of the reasons they are so prevalent is because if you spec an iPad, it's a stinking iPad. It's nothing else. If you spec an Android tablet, is that going to be a Samsung? Is that going to be an Acer? Is that going to be a Toshiba? Is that going to be whoever else is making a tablet? When they, as manufacturers, for example, Crestron or RTI or AMX or any of the control guys, when they make apps for your tablets, whatever, they make one and they guaranteed it's going to work across the board through all the supported iPads. They're not dealing with different screen resolutions, different blah, 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 that comes when you buy everything else.
Until the new one comes out.
Well, yeah,
and you're dealing with new connectors.
That's the same
and
in everything else, though.
Yes. All right.
And I think, in all honesty,
I'm done talking about Apple now.
You're done talking.
I'm just done. Moving on. Let's move on to something a little more positive.
Tim, you wound him up. Come on now.
LG. I started. It was the biggest technology story of the week, arguably. I would think. Yes.
I think it's the most overlooked part of that whole announcement.
What's that?
The iPad was, as much as I love iPads, I think it was the smallest part of the whole event they held.
What was the biggest part of it?
The fact that they did an OS upgrade for free. They made the iWork for free and cloud compatible across the board. That's a direct shot at Google Apps. And in all honesty, it's a much better looking product than Google Apps is. So if the functionality is what they said it was going to be, which it usually is, that's going to be a serious contender, especially for guys that are Mac based.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will have to give it to them that they gave an update for free for the first time.
How much was your last Windows update?
It was called Ubuntu, and it was free. So, moving on. That was for Anthony Zotti. LG Display posts lower revenue, higher profits in the age of Mitsubishi getting out of projector because they can't make any money. Sharp being on the ropes because they can't make any money making displays. LG is posting lower revenue but higher profits. George, we'll start with you on this one. What exactly is LG doing right that, they're technically making less money because of lower revenue, but they're actually making more on the bottom line?
Well, exactly that, right? They're actually focusing on the products that make them money, that they have a market foothold in, and that's what they're going to focus on. This is what businesses do when they overexpand and they need to retract, going, it was nice to get ourselves known in those markets, but it didn't really hold. So let's go back to what we know. Let's say, no, I don't care if you have an order for 1 million of these plasmas. That's not going to make me money. Come back to me with 10 million. Otherwise, nope, we're just going to do what we focus on and reorg and make it right. I think it's a very wise move on their part.
Dawn, does it help the fact that LG is not maybe in the front runner like Sharp was for a while and now Samsung is trying to be, that they've been able to kind of hone their own skills and find this sweet spot?
Well, I mean, anytime you're at the front runner in any industry, ask Apple, that you have a big old target on your back. So, it gives them more flexibility than when you're the market leader and everybody's staring at you to figure out what exactly you're doing. I think it's fantastic that they're able to figure out not just which products to focus on, but also, I mean, there has to be some level of of improving their productivity, improving their processes within their organization to get that level of revenue increase in this day and age. In profit increase in this day and age. So, kudos to their business team, whoever's making those decisions. And you asked what they're doing right. I wish I knew. I'd bottle it up and sell it and make a whole lot of money.
I will say this: the LG has been one of my favorite displays for a while. First, it was because they had a 9-pin. They had a DP9 on the back. They were one of the first displays that we could control, and their control protocols were not ungodly horrific. They weren't as easy as Extron's, but they were pretty simple. Mr. Drainer, what is LG doing right here?
Everything. I mean, anytime you can go down the road of profitability over revenue, I'll take that all day long. I can't say exactly what they're doing right, but they're definitely making the right decisions. And the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, they're talking about the increase of profit. Quarter 3 decreased by 13%, but then, they're expecting tremendous growth coming in, even with the revenue drop. So, we're looking up, 10, 20% increase in profit, even though we're losing on the revenue side. That's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. Matt, do you do any LG? I mean, it typically is display, digital signage type applications. But when it comes to residential or house of worship, I mean, how big of a player are they?
They're becoming a bigger player, just because they've started to produce some much better looking panels that consumers are looking for. It used to be if you didn't sell Panasonic, Sony, or Samsung, nobody wanted to buy from you. But LG's really, made some really good inroads. We see a lot more demand for it. We are a dealer for it, and it has been doing fairly well in the residential world. And signage, their digital signage panels are not second to none, but they're really good.
Yeah, they're pretty well up there.
Panasonic panels are still really
Panasonic, and also NEC panels are pretty.
Yeah, the NECs are beautiful.
And for plasma, their stuff is very difficult to beat.
And for OLED, they're out the window. Isn't that right, Don? OLED.
Actually, are they still manufacturing the? Because for the longest time, it was only them and Panasonic that were actually manufacturing the glass for plasma.
I haven't heard that they're getting out of it, but the line seems to, at least here, seems to be slowly decreasing.
Yeah, I don't think they're actively, no. And I'm still waiting around for my OLED. Moving on from
his 3D OLED.
No, not 3D, just plain old
3D,
simple
16K.
OLED.
16K, that's right.
Yeah,
16K.
You can roll up.
16K OLED.
And I want it for $500. That's it.
This is something that Mr. Canadian doesn't have to worry about yet. Wireless microphone spectrum. Oh, good Lord. SVC Online. We're going to talk about it. The story comes from them. They start out with a very interesting quote. We're going to start with Michael, Mr. Wireless Mike here. To quote Thomas Jefferson, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. In the pursuit of sufficient RF spectrum to meet the National Broadcast Plan, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, is charged with creating significant open bandwidth to meet society's insatiable demand for wireless internet access." Okay, I get that.
Boo.
But no, don't boo that. However, that comes at a price, Mr. Wireless Microphone.
Unfortunately.
Here's the thing. The FCC, I thought, was on the right path here, right? They were on what I perceived to be our side in the fight, the court case against Verizon, where they were saying, you can't do this, and now they're flipping sides again. What should the FCC do when it comes to wireless spectrum for wireless microphones?
So, Representative Bobby Rush, who's an Illinois Democrat right here in the state where we're located, he's introduced a bill to the House, and it's H.R. 2911, the Wireless Microphone Users Interference Protection Act. And basically what he's pushing to do is to secure bandwidth that's dedicated to wireless microphone users across the United States. So after the FCC transition out of 700 megahertz, and it pushed all of our wireless microphones down into the lower bands, there were 2 television channels in each market that were allocated for wireless microphone use, down in the 600 and the 500 megahertz bandwidths or ranges. Under current proposals, the FCC is looking to auction off additional bandwidth in the 600 megahertz band to make this available for broadband users, to continue to expand that to the public use. So what Representative Rush is looking to do is to guarantee that there will always be at least 12 megahertz of space available in every market for wireless microphones. And I think that's definitely a positive thing. If 12 megahertz is not enough, then it's going to be up to the individuals to license space for their major productions if they need something more than that. Now, I think part of this is an education issue with the FCC, because for the longest time they thought that wireless microphones were just a use of broadcast. They didn't really understand the impact that these changes would have across the nation in houses of worship and education and government facilities. So this has really become an issue of managing this bandwidth and making sure we can secure enough for all these areas. I think that Representative Rush is on the right track, and he's looking to garner sponsorship from other representatives to get this bill pushed through Congress to make sure that no matter what the FCC does, we're going to have guaranteed at least 12 megahertz of bandwidth in every market.
Okay, so let's take it from you. I mean, you're based here in St. Louis. He's sitting across the table.
That's
from
why
me.
I'm looking over there.
That's great, right? And in St. Louis, that size 22, 23 market depends on which day of the week it is. Let's go to market number one.
Yeah.
that
New
lives,
York, LA, Chicago.
That lives and breathes.
Absolutely.
Not only live staging and events, which is what Georgia does, Monday through Friday, and twice on Saturday. But you've also got Broadway. You've got you've got every major network in the world.
Exactly.
But you also have this small little thing called the Great White Way. George, how are we going to manage this? I mean, yes, you can take what Michael's saying, what the FCC should do, but you also got this huge allocation of wireless mics. I mean, even a small production, you have a half dozen actors or actresses nowadays. You've got a half dozen wireless mics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's from backstage to look, even on the Great White Way on Broadway, these theaters are packed back to back to back right next to each other. And they're doing 10, 15, 20 channels of wireless.
We got
each.
48 and 60 in some of those venues.
On a mid-size show.
Yeah.
And it's just a mid-size show.
Yeah.
That's nigh on impossible. I mean, the paradigm shift in technology and digital encoding that they're going to have to do to this for it to work, at least here, is going to be monumental. It is going to be a really tough time. Now, it's an opportunity for people to make money if they can afford it and move on and transition. It's a great opportunity, but for us in the field, it's going to be really expensive, and it's going to be a pain in the butt.
Look, it's putting a pinch on the end users, and for that,
nice way of putting it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, really, they're getting the short end of the stick. Now, the manufacturers were benefiting greatly from this. And it's not necessarily what we want. We want our users, and we're advocating for bandwidth, but at the same time, we have to position ourselves and manufacture products that are going to work well in this environment. And Sennheiser, along with some of the other manufacturers, are all working diligently to come up with digital products that work intermodulation free, where you can stack channels right next to each other. We have a product that's come out like that just recently, the D9000. But the problem is it's just so outrageously priced for the typical small theater, they're not going to be able to get there. Major broadcasts, major theaters, they're jumping on board hand over foot, and that's great. But as the technology becomes more and more affordable, we're going to start to see that trickle down into the mid-sized venues. I just hope that happens before the FCC makes their transition.
Well, that's my question to you is, let's say that everything goes as Mr. Rush wants it to go, and we find a way to do this. How long before that transition can actually roll out to, say, the mid-sized theaters at an affordable rate? I mean, this is a tipping point. 2 years, 5 years?
A lot of it comes down to market demand and what the legislation does. Now, I can't speak for other manufacturers. I know that we're working on some stuff right now that I don't have intimate knowledge of. I just know that product engineering is coming out with some things. They're working on products that are going to be focused to that mid-tier market that are going to be able to work in highly congested spaces with adjacent channel spacing. We're not going to have these intermodulation issues. So it's coming. It's coming fast. And as we know, the FCC doesn't do anything very quick. We're talking about it right now, but we're still looking at 2, 3, 5 years out before implementation can actually take place in moving into these broadband devices in that 600 megahertz space.
Michael, you might want to listen to this answer. Don, from an integrator standpoint, what do you wish the wireless manufacturers would do, regardless of what the FCC is going to do? What would help you guys kind of mitigate anything that the FCC might do on their behalf?
It's hard to say. I mean, you almost need magically more bandwidth. I would almost challenge George's assertion. I know Broadway is a huge consumer of wireless mics, but being in the DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland area, we've got, I don't know what the representative's bill specifically calls for, but if it's only 2 channels per major market, we've got DC and Baltimore overlapping, and then on the other side, we've got Philadelphia overlapping. We've got so much business in this area. We've got, very good theater districts in all those cities that are also using a lot of this, the houses of worship, the schools, the yada yada. But we also have this big thing called the federal government. And they use a lot of bandwidth on a lot of different frequencies. A little bit. You can't ask about.
I thought they were still closed.
And it sometimes overlaps with our...
when they're showing up.
You never know. There are times we've done installations down in D.C. that we get interference from somewhere. And we don't know where it is or what it is. And we can't really argue with it. We just have to work around it. So definitely this is one of the more challenging markets to work in. I don't know the answer. If I did, again, I'd make a lot of money because I'd sell it to everybody. But I just think as long as the engineering groups in the major microphone manufacturers keep working on new technologies, new ways of stacking and adjusting and localizing the wireless that they're working on, so we can put a bunch in the same facility or next to each other without a lot of interference. That's a huge help. Also, one thing that's been the companies for competitors have been really good about working on this for like the past decade since this whole white space thing came up. Is just keep lobbying, guys. I get your pressers and your paid lawyers and your whoever. Keep lobbying, keep arguing with the FCC, and let them know, they don't think about, they see wireless technology and cell phones and all the apps and everything else that we're using as a major market, and it is a major market. But what if you woke up tomorrow and there were no wireless mics, no voice lift, no theaters other than old school yelling at the crowd?
Yep.
Go to a football game and you don't know what the heck is going on because you can't see anything unless you know what all these hand signals mean. I mean, realistically, people don't think about it. You take it so for granted that wireless mics are going to be there.
Yeah.
They might not be.
My concern...
So just keep lobbying and keep innovating.
Right. And one of my big concerns is we know how some of these technology chairs in Congress are. It's tubes, not a dump truck. They're doing the same thing with wireless. It's just air.
Right.
There's lots of it.
There's lots of it, yeah.
Seriously. I mean, I'm sure that this representative is very knowledgeable and is trying with the industry to get the knowledge down. But there are many on those chairs, and many on those committees who have no bloody clue. And it's just like their Wi-Fi. But everyone can have one.
Right.
Yeah, it's
so yes. To your point, Don, gotta really push them.
And keep in mind too, what Representative Rush is pushing for is to secure a minimum of 12 megahertz in each space to make sure that we have something allocated in most markets. And to go back to what you're talking about, Tim, talking about Broadway and the broadcasters, the major markets, those guys are already licensing a lot of their wireless use as it is. They're setting up reserved space for them to operate, whether it's at Rockefeller Center or if you're in downtown Chicago, it really doesn't matter. They can apply for those licenses, secure that bandwidth outside of this 12 megahertz. So this bandwidth that we're talking about here is for your typical church, your school, your weekly user who's not going to necessarily be broadcasting this nationwide, but they need to address their congregation or their auditorium, and they need to make sure they get reliable operation. That's really what this is focused toward.
Okay, so then I'll ask you a little more direct question. Should those people register their frequencies? I mean, would it make sense then for a church or for an educational institution to register theirs?
I don't think so. I really don't. But you're talking about an absolute administrative nightmare because the thing with wireless microphones is they're portable. They're mobile. You can put them anywhere, right? It's not like a
But
television.
most churches don't. Most churches aren't portable churches.
I understand that, but the reality is it can move. Okay? And we are seeing more and more churches that are mobile. We're seeing more and more schools take their wireless. Your campus, you guys take wireless, and you'll move from one campus over in Edwardsville, Illinois, to Godfrey, Illinois, Illinois to Carrollton or Carlinville. You move stuff around on a regular basis. So that means you'd have to license a frequency in each one of those locations for the number of channels that you want to allocate. So think about that from an administrative standpoint. The best way to deal with that is what Representative Rush is saying is, look, let's reserve this space. You run your scans, you coordinate your stuff with the people around you, and go have fun. And the manufacturers, all of the manufacturers have made that fairly easy to do at this stage of the game. So for the non-critical applications, you use the 12 megahertz that's available in each market. For critical applications, then, the big broadcasters, the major shows, they're going to license a certain amount of bandwidth needed for their particular production. They can license it on a per-use basis, or they can license it permanently. Really comes down to what their needs are. Same thing holds true for major sporting events, the NFL, the MLB, and whatnot. Because you got the wireless intercoms, you've got the referees' mics, announcers' mic, broadcast mics. There's so much, hundreds of channels at any one of those events. You got to make sure that that's all locked up for those things. So time is going to tell. And kind of speaking to Dawn, I know ourselves, along with all the other manufacturers, we are all lobbying to Congress. We have dedicated representatives who are in Washington on a regular basis lobbying for the rights of wireless microphone users. And we're going to keep going down that road. Just be patient, and we'll see what happens at the end of the day. Ultimately, it's up to the FCC.
Be patient. Yeah. Mr. Canadian, do you have anything for this? Or you guys have plenty of bandwidth?
No, we, especially where I'm located, we get tons of overspill issues from Detroit and Buffalo. So this is actually something that we deal with not only in my local church, but in a lot of the churches that we work with, where, you got to remember that the majority of the Canadian population is within 100 miles of the U.S. border. And what that means is, again, we spill over. We have the same things that our CRTC does that your FCC does, and they kind of follow suit with what the FCC does. So when you lost all of your bandwidth a couple of years ago, guess what? Ours went away too. I currently not in this room, but in one of my other rooms, I have a bunch of Shure mics that don't work anymore because we get interference.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
Cannot get past
that's
it.
Okay.
You forgot who you were on the air with. So
No, I know who I'm on the air with. That's
why he said it.
The brand that I like to use and that we specify consistently.
Sennheiser.
The other S.
The other S.
We're working on it. We'll work on it.
All right. You're listening to AV Week. If you're watching the test run of our Google Hangout, thank you for watching. But most likely you're listening to this on a download. Matt Scott's here from Omega Audio Video, Michael Drainer from Sennheiser, Dawn Mead from Net AV, and George Tucker from World Stage. Real quickly, guys, we're going to talk about Kramer, and they have a new product out, but this leads us to a conversation about wireless high-definition video, which scares me to no end still. And yes, there are people who are doing it consistently. It's still... Okay, so let's just read the specs, and we'll start the conversation. The KW11 is a transmitter receiver set that sends HDMI signal, my issue number 1 there, wirelessly up to 40 feet, issue number 2, using WHDI technology, and is capable of sending uncompressed video resolutions up to 1080p at 60 hertz. George, we'll start with you. First of all, do you believe them?
Brundlefly.
Was that episode number 2?
Something like that.
Pretty much.
It still holds true. It's Brundlefly. Now, I'd say about
Explain
10
that,
feet, maybe
please.
20 feet. Well, if anyone doesn't remember Brundlefly, it's from the movie The Fly, in which when a fly gets into the transporter he creates, their DNA mixes and he becomes part fly. So you're not really Brundle or Fly, you're Brundlefly. And the 1990s movie was really good.
Yes.
But it's a nice element, and part of what I was looking at when I was looking at it then, and I was looking at it 2 years ago, I looked at it again. It still is very difficult because I don't want to run wires in my old 1901 Colonial that doesn't have modern framing. It still has slat boards. But it just in an urban area where I am, it's not going to work that well. Now maybe they'll prove me wrong, and I'd love to see a demo. Please send it to me. But until then, I still have my severe doubts. Get it to work on the Infocom trade floor for 5 feet, I'll believe you.
Okay, that's valid, and the reason we say that's valid because that's a trade show floor with several hundred exhibitors and wireless going crazy and back and forth. Dawn, when it comes to installations, George mentions the fact that you're having existing installations is one instance here. Am I just an old codger, or are we getting there when it comes to wireless video? Oh, be quiet, young whippersnapper. I was talking to Dawn.
He's the old codger.
I don't know the details on this particular Kramer thing, but I've just recently somebody came into our office, and I can't remember the manufacturer off the top of my head. They had a similar product to this. I know Peerless has their AirPlay system that's a very similar thing. And I can't sit here off the top of my head and tell you all the specs on them all. I do know that the AirPlay from Peerless goes it can go 40 or 50 feet, and then they have a Big Brother version that goes 100 feet. I can tell you this much: it works. I won one at a trade show, and it's in my bed running HDMI. From my satellite receiver in the living room at the rack to the back bedroom instead of putting in a separate receiver. Now, it doesn't work all the time. It's not perfect. It sometimes loses sync. It's glitchy. It's new, and I have a big house. But, I think we're getting there. It's not there yet. I think wireless video will come. But then again, we run into the same kinds of problems, like, are we going to have, interference? Are you going to have too many of these in one facility or one area, city block that every company has it, and then they start, cross interfering. My own customers, probably not going to sell a lot of these, but again, most of my customers are federal government, and they not only have security requirements of having things hardwired, they have to, in some cases, see the hard wires or have them fiber wired so that there's, no possibility of interference or getting captured. So, for some of us, it's not going to be such a big deal, but I've seen corporate people already interested in this, the AirPlay, there's some consumer models for home theater use that they sell them at BJ's and Costco. So, and again, I can't remember the manufacturer, but it's coming. It's getting there, and you're not such an old fogey. You're my age, so you're not an old fogey.
Oh!
That is the only reason
Matt
I'm
Scott
not an
just
old
called
fogey.
Dawn old.
But it's coming. It's coming, and people are demanding it. Who
You
wants wires? Who wants to be tied down with this stuff?
The difference is, though, the products you're talking about, Dawn, that we see especially on the consumer space, they use high levels of compression. They're low bandwidth devices. I'm looking at the spec sheet on this right now, and it says the communication frequency is 5.1 to 5.9. Now, I don't know if that means it's 800 megahertz worth of bandwidth.
It's uncompressed,
to deliver that. I mean, that is a tremendous amount of bandwidth and a tremendous amount of opportunity for interference. Or trying to cover that space.
In a 5 mile square radius.
Yes.
Right. So, think about that. 800 megahertz of bandwidth to transmit that. Now, looking at it, it says no line of sight requirements, but I'm telling you, at 5 gigahertz, if you don't have line of sight, you're not going very far. It's just not going to happen. So I'm very curious to see this thing in operation. And like Dawn said, what's the channel density? How many of them can you put in a space? Or like you said, is it one in a room per city block? And then that's all the better you're going to be able to do. So time will tell.
Yeah. Matt, when it comes to this, are we looking, whether it's a house of worship or residential, are these coming and we just have to accept the fact that it may eventually do this?
Oh yeah, it's coming. It's we're getting asked for it. We've installed them. We laugh when we put them in and giggle and watch the guys. No, we do, because it kind of works, and then it doesn't, and then it does again, and then the baby monitor goes off, and everything's screwed up, and you're just like
And that's the lower bandwidth compressed version.
Exactly.
Right? Those are the lower bandwidth models. So go to the high bandwidth model and imagine what that's going to do with the interference.
No, I agree completely.
I'm not seeing it yet.
We saw a bunch demoed at CEDIA again this year, and one of the companies that we do sell, I went over and talked to the rep, and I'm like, so you're showing these again, have you fixed it? And he's like, fixed what? Fix the fact that we can't make it work 25 feet away, room to room, not even outside of one room into another room, and I need a bigger thing because you can't see my hands. But
wide shot, Matt. Wide shot.
I know. What? Back it up.
My goodness.
He just kind of looked at me and he was like, "No, it works." I'm like, "Yes, I know. In the test labs, it works. There's lots of things that work in the test labs
inside a Faraday cage."
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the real world where we're dealing with stuff, and not even in, the population densities that George would have to deal with and stuff like that, it's really tough. And of course, where do we want to use them? We don't want to use them in the lovely rooms where it's, some 2x4s and drywall. We want to use it in the concrete boxes where we can't pull cable.
Mm-hmm.
It don't work so well.
Honestly, the thing that's worked best for me, and I'm going back to stroke
Pulling
Scott's
cable?
ego here, is my Apple TV. I do a lot of presentations with Apple TV. It looks fabulous. I stream YouTube videos to it from my iPhone. You just can't beat it right now. And I'm sorry, for the money and the reliability of using the Wi-Fi network, I just don't see this getting traction.
Well, and the other side, too, is that a lot of the panel manufacturers have continued to upgrade their software to the point of now, even from my iPhone, if I play something on YouTube or even Netflix, it'll pop up and see my network-connected TVs and ask me if I want to send it to one of those TVs. Not to my Apple TV, but to the actual panel.
Right.
And the ability to do that will, at some point outweigh everything else.
Well, and even though there's some latency there, right? I mean, you do have a little bit of latency. The spec sheet on here says less than 1 millisecond system latency. Okay, now that's great, but how many applications do I need less than 1 millisecond latency for high definition video?
Yeah, exactly.
I just most of the time in the corporate presentation space or even in education space, it's not necessary.
No, but if you're expecting 1080p uncompressed video, you need that, right?
Why? Why do I care how long it takes to get from my source device to my display?
As long as it's all going at the same time.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is
right.
If it's going at the same time.
The only time it becomes an issue is when you have the spikes in latency.
Yes.
And it spikes up and then slows down.
Yes.
And you get
Exactly.
that text of, this is a really, really, really good app. And then it slows back down. That's when you run into issues. But again, for what this product,
like right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, like right now.
So for what this product is marketed to, you don't really need that.
Right.
Because again, if you're going to have in your boardroom, if you need a true screening room, you're going to build a stinking streaming room.
Yeah.
You're not going to go, oh, well, maybe we'll buy this wireless piece because that'll be awesome. You're not going to do that. You're going to buy the proper products. And again, if you're working with a good integrator, they're not going to sell you this crap and hope it works.
Right. Now, I'm not saying this to bash Kramer. I'm actually I'm giving them kudos for coming up with the product. I'm just not seeing the market for it yet. I just don't feel like the technology's there.
No, I see the market for it. I don't think that it.
Not when you see the other products.
Specs.
Not when you see the other products that are in the market that are able to deliver high definition video. So I want to know more about where they're really targeting this. Is it extremely high end? Historic venues where I have to have uncompressed. I just don't see many venues anymore where uncompressed is absolutely mandatory.
And see, that's the part I don't believe is the uncompressed
Right.
because even your satellite receiver and your cable company is compressing, the signal down. So
yeah, but now once I have it in my little Cisco box, I want it completely uncompressed.
All right,
From the
Don,
Cisco
I'm switching
box.
off you.
Don
Yes,
was
Don.
trying to say something.
Matt, you were making a big assumption a couple minutes ago when you said that a responsible integrator won't sell you that crap and that you're willing to spend the money because let me tell you, sometimes those corporate customers, I love all my corporate customers, but sometimes if you're not the lowest quote and you're not the lowest, it's like I saw this other solution, I could do it without wires and it's half the price.
No.
It's like
No. I'm completely aware of that, but I am on a crusade to have integrators stop being dumb.
But he's
You're not dumb. But that doesn't mean the guy down the street isn't dumb and wouldn't
I'm
sell
not
it
saying
to
me as an
Cinema.
integrator. I'm saying integrators in general. I want to see us stop being stupid. I was in a rep meeting the other day,
good luck
and I
with
sat
that.
down and
Yeah.
and we sat down, and one of the guys was like, "Oh yeah, I was just meeting with one of your other guy in town," and I'm just like, "All right, next time you see him, tell him to stop being stupid. I'm tired of fixing this crap." And the rep's mouth just dropped to the floor, and I'm like, "Pick that up." And then send him a text and stop doing stupid things because it makes us all look bad.
Can we have the same thought for consultants? Is that possible?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So-
Yeah. Everybody just don't.
No
be
consultants specifically, especially none. Never mind. I almost named one here in St. Louis. From AV Network. Cables to Go. Nah, I've been threatened before, and never mind. Cables to Go launches emerging digital AV technologies initiative. Cables to Go, which actually is they're calling themselves C2G now. C2G, and I've used Cables to Go for a lot of years, so I have a lot of respect for them. They rolled out a really cool initiative last week during AVWeek. AVWeek, the celebration, not AVWeek, the show, which is where we stole the name from. They have a new education initiative called 5 AV Technologies that will define the next 5 years. So I saw this, I'm like, this is kind of cool. And they rolled it out, like I said, last week during AVWeek. George, we'll kick it off with you. What is, if you had to pick one or two of those 5, not there specifically, but one for you, what would be one or two of your 5 technologies that are going to be the number 1 or number 2 technologies in AV for the next few years?
I'm going to be honest here. I didn't even see the article because it's not on my list.
What's on the list?
Well, you had
Not
to.
on my list.
You had to drill into the website. So, did you go through
I got the article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is HDMI, HD Base T, Miracast, DisplayPort, and MHL.
Okay.
They're saying the most influential or the most.
I'm saying what
The technologies that are going to define the next 5 years, that are going to be blazing the trails.
Unfortunately, it's HDMI, isn't it? Because they've got the lock on it, and they're guiding and dictating everything.
Correction, HDMI does not have a lock. Moving on.
You got me there.
You can buy a locking HDMI cable.
Yeah, it's a third.
Yeah, but it's like a piercing screw. And
What's that little thing that we got at Infocom 2 years ago?
It wasn't 2 years ago. It was 3 years ago. Because Extron hasn't been for 3 years. Moving on. All right, George, go ahead.
No, it's got to be HDMI because I'd love it to be DisplayPort. I'd love it to be Thunderbolt video, but it's not going to be.
All right. Mr. Drainer, what is your one or two? And it doesn't have to be on the list. I mean, the list is nice, but is it something else? Is it wireless, maybe? Even though we just,
Well, I mean, that's where that's true.
Nice.
That's where the Miracast comes in, right? It's a point-to-point peering network for like BYOD type environments where you can share device to device. I can see that starting to emerge more and more as we move into greater demands for wireless technology. But I also see the other side of that, and only time's going to tell, as going back to our microphone discussion, as the FCC's cranking down on some of this stuff and takes away more and more bandwidth in that upper end in the microwave bands and in the Wi-Fi bandwidth of the 5 gigahertz and the 2.4, that starts becoming more compressed. I really see more people going back to the wire than I do going wireless. So I think we're going to see a unique shift. We're going to see this real push toward wireless. People are going to say, hey, this is great, but it's not reliable. Let's go back to a wire. And that's what I see happening over the next 5 years.
Okay. Don, where do you see us from a technology standpoint in the next 2 or 3 years?
At the end of the day, I don't think it matters to most of our customers and to us even what's on the end of our wire here. Because everything that we've had has had a new evolution. As soon as we get used to, coax, it goes to the next thing. As soon as we get used to HDMI, it's going to go to the next thing. As soon as we, it doesn't matter what's at the end of the wire. There's going to be a wire. I agree with you there. I don't think that we're going to go completely wireless. But the more important thing that's going to be driving our industry is not what's at the end of your wire, but how you're using it. And so I think the biggest thing that's going to I think what's going to impact the technology in our industry more is things like the rise of the huddle station, the rise of the flipped classroom to the BYOD revolution. I think that's really because just since Infocom, when I first heard a couple of those terms, every customer we've had, government or otherwise, has asked for it, or we're getting more and more bids for these things. So it's really become more the use is driving the technology than what's at the end of the wire. As long as it works and accomplishes what they need it to, I don't sell equipment, I sell solutions.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what's at the end of my wire. As long as it works and they can huddle or they can flip the classroom or they can hook up their iThings and their Android things and make it go. that's what's really driving it.
Dawn, it's not
Getting
what
that
I
stuff
look
to
like.
collaborate.
It's not what I look like. It's what's inside that counts.
No, not with you. It's not. All right, moving on. Matt Scott, where are we going to be in 3 to 4 years?
Just even more so on the network than we already are.
Okay.
Everything is continuing to go that way. I do think that we are going to see a lot more use of, Ethernet cables for everything, whether it's HDBaseT or another, something else that comes down the road. We're continuing to move farther and further and further towards that completely connected system, whether it's wireless, wired, whatever. That's where we're going to be.
Okay. All right, guys. One last story, and then I'll let you get out of here and get off the Google thing. From ITP.net, what cabling, speaking of cabling, will support 40 gigabyte or gigabit?
Thunderbolt.
Very nice. Very yeah.
Thunderbolt 2.
Thunderbolt will not support 40
Thunderbolt
gigabit,
2.
whatever. The reason I bring this up is I've had a couple conversations with both HDBaseT guys and as well as AVB folks in the last couple of weeks, and you start pushing, you start looking at 1080p deep color, which is something both AMX and Crestron will go through when they start talking about their twisted pair solutions or their infrastructure solutions, because a twisted pair, you're not going to push 1080p deep color. They automatically move you to the fiber solution because of the bandwidth limitations. You start jumping from 1080p deep color, which is, still less than 10 gigs. You start pushing into 4K and 8K. You're quickly getting into 20 and 30 gigabits infrastructure. So, Michael, we'll kick this off with you. We're going to need something that handles 40 gigabits pretty quickly. I mean, let's say in 5 or 6 years. That being the case, what are we looking at here? Is it single mode, or is it single mode fiber, or is it something completely different?
Well, first of all, I think it's going to be closer than the next 5 years. I mean, we're already seeing aggregation problems at wireless access points. The APs today can actually transmit and receive at extremely high data rates and support a large number of clients, to the point where the existing gigabit connections that we have are no longer sufficient to sustain that. So you take all these APs in a venue, bring them back to an access layer switch, and you've got to have a backhaul that's capable of tremendous speed to be able to maintain that bandwidth. So, 40G is coming much sooner than we think it is. Now, the transport medium, I think that's still debatable, what the medium is going to be. Is it copper? Is it optical? What is it? I think time is going to tell as the cable manufacturers and the data manufacturers continue to come out with the new technologies and work on their R&D. But I think it's going to be much faster than what we initially anticipated.
Mm-hmm. George, rental staging and live events, where are we going to be in 3 or 4, like maybe Michael said, 2 years when it comes to 40 gigs?
Yeah, fiber.
Fiber, okay.
At the current moment, the way staging and event staging technologies move, they don't always transition as nearly as fast as the other pro markets, because we're traveling. We need something reliable that can be crushed, that we can repair very quickly, and we're just learning how to use fiber, so that's where we'll be.
Okay. Don, you live and breathe in the heart of the Beltway, so fiber is almost, you guys have been doing fiber for a number of years because of security. Is that where you see you guys staying, is fiber?
Of the options available currently, I say definitely fiber. And first of all, if everybody's using fiber, it might finally drive some costs down, so the government won't be the only ones able to afford it.
And Google.
And Google, yes.
Right, exactly. So there's some good benefits there if fiber is what we end up. But if I've learned anything in my years in the industry, it's as soon as we adopt something as our standard or the go-to, the next thing's coming out the pike. I mean, this industry has such a development turnaround and stuff that of the available options, definitely fiber.
Until we can get to
who knows what's going to
biogenic.
come out next week? Or yeah, exactly. Who knows what's going to be next? We might come up with something ridiculous like that. So, but right now, fiber. I'm with George.
All right. Last but not least, do you have fiber in Canada, Matt?
Very, very limited.
Very limited.
It is in some of our bigger metros, but we don't have it in London yet. And last I heard, the deployment was still a year to 2 years away.
Just real quickly, we don't have it where I live either. So.
Yeah, no. Well, the hard thing is that in all reality, I'm only an hour and a half from Toronto, which is our biggest city, and they have a lot of fiber. We don't. it still surprises me how long it takes to get through that system. But once,
sweetie, I'm 30 minutes from Baltimore and DC, and we don't have fiber in my county yet. So
I know. And yet I have friends in the middle up here of Michigan, and they have stinking fiber to the pole, and now fiber to the house. It's ridiculous. But yeah, we'll get it at some point, and when we get it, I'll be excited. But until then, I don't really care.
But what's the point of putting in the fiber anyway if Verizon and the other providers are going to use up all of our 600 megahertz bandwidth to provide?
No, they want both. They want both. They want the wire and the
just monopolize it all the way around.
They want the whole shebang, and then they're going to throw net neutrality on us and say the only thing you can do is text message and whatever. All right. That's going to do it for this week in this interesting episode. If you guys liked it, let us know. Go by the Facebook page, the Twitter, the website, avnation.tv. Send us a message if you liked the Hangout thing and the live video, or go to the YouTube channel and make a comment.
If you didn't like it, keep it to yourself.
That's right.
No one wants to complain.
You know what?
We don't want all that negativity.
I mean, if it helps for me to wear a mask, or I'll come in with I'll have John Hamm. I'll wear a John Hamm mask.
Get a John Hamm mask.
Did you see him on the game last night?
I did.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize him with the beard and the hat. Yeah.
John Hamm, in case you didn't know, first of all, he's from Mad Men. Secondly, he's from St. Louis, and he's an avid St. Louis sports fan. He's been on the St. Louis Blues promos that they've shown here locally. Mm-hmm. He's a huge St. Louis Cardinal fan, and he was there last night when the Cardinals avoided a sweep.
Yes,
That's all I'm going to say at this point, is that they avoided a repeat of 2004. So that's for my buddy Craig McCormick, who's from Commercial Integrator and a huge Boston Red Sox fan. Yep. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. AV Dawn Mead has been here. She has her own blog, but she also helps us out an awful lot. In her full-time gig, she works for Net AV. How can people find you or locate you or read what you've been writing?
You can find me on Twitter at AVDawn, Adam Victor, DAWN. Theoretically, I have my blog still going, avdawn.com. I have to write something there. It's been a while. I've been busy. And check me out at net-av.com. That's where I am during the day. Keep me busy.
All right. Next up is George Tucker. George is the engineering coordinator for World Stage. In addition to that, he does an awful lot of stuff here. Where can people find you, sir?
I am Tucker2s. If it's on social media, that's where it is. I'm also now writing for Commercial Integrator and Corporate Tech Decisions, so check my articles out there.
All right. Yes. And next up is Matt Scott from Omega Audio Video, but you also do some writing as well and some social media and stuff, so where can people find you?
I do. I can be found at either Matt E. Scott or Omega Audio Video on pretty much every social device out there. And I also write for SCN and a little bit for Resi Systems, so you can find me there too.
All right. And last but not least, Michael Drainer. He works for Sennheiser USA. He's starting to do some writing and stuff. So how can people find you, sir?
Michael Drainer on Twitter, or visit SennheiserUSA.com. And once I get that blog post back out there, we'll see if we can't update my site after a year of sitting idle. Thanks, Dawn.
That would be nice.
Yeah, you and me both, brother. You and me both.
All right, and we just got a crazy breaking news, which is kind of fun to do when you're doing a video. This comes to us from Vadio via Chris Netto. Breaking news, Vadio has announced the first weekly winner of the Vadio Group Station Contest. Somebody give me a drum roll. Thank you. Gary David Royce. We'll tweet.
Well, that's not me.
I know it's not, but I really did like your tweet. I really did like your tweet because it said she wanted to do it for the AVWeek stuff. So,
nice.
Yeah, it was nice. So we may have to talk to somebody. We should find somebody. We should introduce ourselves to somebody at Vadio.
I wonder if we know someone at Vadio.
I don't know if we know anybody at Vadio, except for maybe
Kelly Perkins.
Kelly Perkins.
My fabulous co-host of the
Yes, indeed. So, all right. Indeed. So yeah, congratulations to him, and we'll retweet that so you can. It's a Vine, so it's a kind of neat Vine, and it involves coffee. If you want to follow me, go by Twitter. It's TD Albright, Tim David Albright. But more importantly for me and all the folks here, this is my group. These are my peeps. These are the folks that help me do what we do here. Go by the website, AVNation.tv. AVNation.tv, you'll find this show as well as a host of others. We just did another education-based podcast this week. We have a social one coming up, a live, all sorts of ones. So, yeah, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. This has been AV Week.